Welcome in, Bears fans, to the Sports Cubicle and Sports from the Couch. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day. And that didn't end the way we wanted it, did it? As the Chicago Bears fall to the Minnesota Vikings 27-24 on Monday Night Football. Not the way we expected the season to start, not the way we expected the Ben Johnson era to begin. We had expectations. I think you, myself, pundits, experts, scouts had a certain idea of what we were looking for, what we wanted to see on Monday Night Football to end week one in the 2025 season for the beloved Chicago Bears, the charter franchise of the NFL. And interesting enough, before we get into the breakdown, I got my sheet of notes, my thoughts, everything that has transpired since Monday Night Football. It's interesting. If you're new to here, one thing that we don't do is just go through the stats. You could do that at Pro Football Reference. You could do that at ESPN, on Google, on Twitter. You yourself are smart enough. If you're listening to this podcast, if you listen to us over at the Bear Era podcast, you know how to look at stats. You also know how to correspond what you saw with your own eyes on television or at the stadium to the stats that you see. Here we like to talk about more of the big picture, the story, the vibes, everything that's kind of going into the game and everything that comes out of that game. And it was an interesting one on Monday night, besides the great opening drive, besides some of the decision-making, besides some of the penalties, besides some of the play. If you're a Bears fan, it was almost too eerily similar to so many different games, good and bad. As a Bears fan, if you were watching Monday Night Football against the Vikings, you lived an entire lifetime as a Bears fan, because you have seen and you have lived through every single one of those moments in different games, different iterations, different stakes. And we saw it all on Monday Night Football. And I think the most disappointing thing was the prospect of change that didn't occur. It was too much of the same old, same old. It was poor execution, poor time management, poor use of challenges, undisciplined football. And at the end of the day, they couldn't score. So you saw everything that you've seen before. And what seemed like a game that they should have blown the doors out of the Minnesota Vikings. At no moment did you, myself, or anybody watching that game felt comfortable that the Bears were going to win that one. Even to the point when they had a lead going into the fourth quarter, you did not feel that they were going to win that game. And if you do look at it, right, you have that opening touchdown in the first quarter. Then you have a field goal. So you're up 10-0 or 10-6 because they have those two field goals. Then you score another touchdown. So before you get to that, you have a double-digit lead and you give up 21 points in the fourth quarter. But you look at that and you look at some of these stats. That's why we don't just hang up on just pure stats on paper, because paper doesn't always tell the whole story. Fact remains that the defense did everything it can to try to win you that game, from taking not only a turnover, but doing something that we desperately wanted to see from this defense, and that's put points on the board. They kept in check Justin Jefferson for most of that game, the running game for most of that game. And more importantly, they made J.J. McCarthy look like a first-time starter in the NFL. That is a game you're supposed to take advantage of. What Dennis Allen was putting out there, with so many injuries the Bears defense had, without having Gordon and Johnson and Edwards, they were able to, for the most part, control that game, and they couldn't walk away with a win. They couldn't take advantage of it. These are all things that, once again, just feel like your time is a flat circle and you're running on the treadmill. That you're seeing these things over and over again, because you're not crazy. So why don't we go over some of the notes that I took, right? And I think the big one, and it's the elephant in the room, it's the Caleb Williams game. That first opening sequence with the scripted plays were beautiful. I mean, you had that play where he rolls out to the right, escaping, the pressure, and gets it to Rome Odunze. That is stuff that he can do. That is the spectacular amongst the mundane that is Caleb Williams. The issue is, and you saw it in that play with Cole Kmet, and especially the one with DJ Moore, where they had him wide open for a touchdown, straight to the house. He overthrows him by 5 yards. It's not even close. And he is going to murder somebody throwing the ball the way he does up the middle. That is a big time issue. Caleb Williams did not look good. And Caleb Williams too many times has not looked good. Looks like he has not developed. And it's beyond just coaching. You're looking at things that he's making mistakes since he was a rookie. And we could blame Shane Waldron and Matt Eberflus all we want. They're not here anymore. An entire summer has happened. You've got into the first game. These games matter. And you showed up as if you weren't prepared, as if you haven't practiced the deficiency in your game. See, if you look at Ben Johnson, the Ben Johnson effect is supposed to open up the middle. And if you're watching that game, Caleb can't attack the middle of the field. He holds on to the ball too long. He can't find his target. He can't see the open receiver. And if we're finding that out week 1, and if that doesn't get any better, all this is toast. None of this matters. Now, knowing full well this is overreaction Tuesday at this point, first game of the season, but you see things that can become trends, that can become pitfalls. And one of the things, speaking on Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams in this matter, is the offensive line. Dahlman letting somebody just go unanswered. The amount of Caleb Williams having to take 2 sacks, but more than anything, that none of those runs that Caleb had that were leading the team in rushing were design rushes. They were just there of him making plays on the feet. And sometimes it was just him putting his eyes to the ground and getting out of there because he knew he was going to get crushed. You spent a lot of money on this offensive line. And after week 1, I don't think the investment was paid back. So there is a scary thing if, once again, your offensive line isn't working after you've invested so much in it. And on top of it, if they're going to be, it's one thing if they're just going to let people go right through them, be able to pin their ears behind their head and just go at it. But back-breaking penalties that are taking points off the board, nobody can overcome that. Nobody can overcome a bad challenge. You know, I could understand if it were a little bit closer to Hockenson play, but his knees were down and the NFL is weird. The play on the field, the call on the field was that it was a down player. It would have taken a lot for them to have overturned that. And it cost you a timeout. And you were sitting there and I was sitting there. We were all watching and knowing, oh, that's going to come back and bite them. There's no way it doesn't come back and bite them. There is so much more that happened, and we are breaking it all down as the Chicago Bears fall to the Minnesota Vikings 27-24 on Monday Night Football. We are here on the Sports Cubicle and Sports from the Couch. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. We are breaking down and trying to just make sense of what was a really unfortunate first game of the 2025 season, the first game under Ben Johnson, the second year of the Caleb Williams tenure. And you know, you have this offense, and we were talking about the design plays and how there weren't meant for Caleb to scramble. Well, part of that too is not only your offensive line, they have no running game, none. And this has been a concern since they've signed DeAndre Swift. And it's something that we've talked about when Ben Johnson was the OC in Detroit and they got rid of DeAndre Swift. So this is still something they haven't answered. Here's another one, as just looking through my notes. Bears kicking. It has now become a joke. It is something that we're all traumatized. It is all shared trauma between Bears fans. But the kicking situation in Chicago, you don't want to squarely say it cost them anything, but it sure as hell didn't help them. You know, you have Cairo Santos missing 50-yarders when average NFL kickers are hitting it from 60 plus. And then you have Taylor, who you spent all this money on when it comes to draft capital, can't get the ball into the end zone, past the upright, so that you have time past the 2-minute warning. These are things that you're supposed to clean up. You're supposed to shore up and not lose these type of ways. These are ways that old regimes lose, that they avoided winning because of this. You look at Matt Eberflus, you look at Matt Nagy, Mark Trestman. These are mistakes they made, and we hounded them. We made fun of their intelligence. And this Bears team did all those things. Everything that you've seen from different tenures, from different coaches, from different regimes, were all showed on one game on Monday Night Football. So who's to blame? Part of it is Ben Johnson. How much is he willing to adapt his offense, his coaching to the team that he has? It seemed like in the first half, he kind of figured out and was out coaching Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell. But by the time we got to the end of the third quarter, there was no question who had the better coaching staff. If you were Minnesota, there was no point where you were sitting there saying, we can't come back and win this game. We're not in this game. And a lot of that is coaching. We've seen the record that Kevin O'Connell has in one-score games. That's the difference, the margins, the little stuff that helps you win is your coaching staff making the right moves, pulling the right strings instead of the other guy. And this was one of those cases where you thought you finally had one of those coaches. And after week one, you don't feel so confident. Now, am I sitting here saying, get rid of him? He's a bust? No. But I can only talk about what we saw in that game. And what we saw in those games on Monday Night Football wasn't just, oh, it happens. That was the one mistake they made. Oh, I can hang my... It was a complete failure across the line. And I'll give the defense a little bit of a pass. And Dennis Allen, even though by the time we got to the end of it, Kevin O'Connell kind of figured it all out. Also, the team kind of looked, I don't know if the word's not conditioned, but look gas. Look gas. Both the defense and the offensive line look gas by the end of this game. Also, where's Montez Sweat? We heard him one play with the ball swatted down. Somebody who's getting paid a lot of money, who's a focal point of this defense, you could really use him being a game wrecker, like Michael Parsons was doing in Green Bay, or the way Aiden Hutchinson does for the Detroit Lions, or that entire Minnesota Vikings defense with Brian Flores schemed up. You're going to need special plays from somebody like Montez Sweat. So I guess the next question is, will things change? They can against Detroit. If you don't think Detroit's that good, if you think Detroit won't have some type of motivation after losing last week and wanting to get right against their former OC, then you should feel good going into week 2. But I don't feel that way. I still think Jared Goff can throw for 250 yards plus. Amon-Ra can go off for 2 touchdowns. Jameson Williams can go off. Jahmyr Gibbs can crush this defense little by little, play by play. So it doesn't get any easier for the Bears. It doesn't, the idea that this team was going to, had the benefit of the doubt that they were going to walk in and we were going to see them be a new look Bears team, that's gone out the window. So going into week 2, I have no trust that they're going to show up and beat Detroit until they do it. So why did it go so bad, though? The truth of the matter is it went so bad because some of these players don't know how to execute. Too many times you saw Darnell Wright get called for a bad penalty. Caleb Williams not being able to hit his open receiver. DeAndre Swift not being able to make a second or third level run. It is the little things from the last regime that need to get ironed out. And that's what's worrisome. That's worrisome, is to see that the things that were wrong with the team last year, while some of it is gone because of the new regime change, still popped its ugly head out. And you can't blame Eberflus for that. You can't blame Shane Waldron for that. You know, you Ryan Poles are the reason, are the guy in charge, and you still haven't brought in a competent running game where you're having to use DJ Moore as your running back, and you might have lost him now for a few games. And that's who's responsible, because that's the ultimate question. There's blame to go around for everybody. Caleb Williams deserves blame, but responsibility still falls on two people, Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson. Now, Caleb Williams needs to execute. This team needs to score touchdowns. But the people who are ahead of this thing, that are right there in front of the media, that were promising us all this different stuff in the offseason, are those two men. So I expect them to be the ones that right the ship heading into week 2. And I guess that's kind of where we'll end this one, is the emotion of all it. Week 1 obviously has the most overreaction, but I don't think you're crazy for feeling some type of icky way about this Bears team, because it doesn't take much. You don't have to be this big expert. You don't have to have millions of hours of film study to see something isn't quite right. Yeah, there are flashes of talent, of scheme, of good things that you saw on Monday Night Football. But you did see the difference between good and bad teams. Good teams win that game. Good teams put bad teams away. Good teams put teams that want to give you a win. They take it. The Bears did what a bad team does. They did what they've done for a long time. They gave up a win. They did everything in their power to trip themselves over and fumble a victory. And now they have all the pressure in the world. This new boy wonder head coach, who we are all hyped for. We know he has talent. We know he's a hell of a coordinator. But now he has, almost in his second game ever, what feels like a must-win against his former team. Caleb Williams needs to show up, because the people are talking already for Tyson Bagent. And I may think you people are insane for thinking that. Nothing against Tyson. Love him. But if it doesn't work for Caleb, it doesn't matter. It ain't going to work with Tyson. So he needs to step up in the second game of his sophomore season. That's what you did on Monday Night Football. And it's not because you lost the game. It's how you lost it. And the inept football we saw from the Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football. But we'll see how they bounce back, if they bounce back against the Detroit Lions this coming up Sunday. Let us know your thoughts. What did you think about the Bears falling to the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football, 27-24? Now 0-1 to start the 2025 campaign. Winless so far in the Ben Johnson era, and year 2 for Caleb Williams. Not starting off as hot as we were hoping. Make sure you guys leave a comment down below. Subscribe to us if you haven't over at the Sports Cubicle. Download us wherever you get your favorite podcast at Sports from the Couch. If you want more Bears content, EJ Snyder from Bootleg Football, Kieran Hall from the Irish Bears Show, Mike Mercado from Sports from the Couch and the Sports Cubicle. We have a podcast called the Bear Era Podcast. We are under the umbrella of Blue Wire Podcast Network. Check it out. We've had Adam Amin on the show just a few weeks back, and we have some amazing guests coming down the pipe. So make sure you guys check us out on YouTube at Bear Era Podcast, and everywhere else on social media at Bear Era Pod. Enjoy the rest of your week. Get ready, calm down, take a deep breath. It'll be all right. There will be a game 2, and hopefully the Bears show up a little bit better against the Detroit Lions on their normal noon start time. We'll see you guys next week for the week 2 post game of Bears versus Lions here on Sports from the Couch and the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado.